Odion's Yu-Gi-Oh strategy that got support from Maze of the Masters will be meta after the ban list. It has been a long time coming because Odion is one of my favorite Yu-Gi-Oh characters of all time. Trap monsters and trap cards have been underappreciated for so long, it's about time they finally get the recognition they deserve.
You know, they call this game Duel Monsters because you're supposed to fight your opponent with monster cards, not spend the whole game hiding behind your little trap cards like a coward.
If you can find me the rule that forbids me from playing trap cards, I'll stop, Mr. Wheeler.
In case you guys didn't know who I am, hi, I'm your professor, TheCaliEffect, and all of my accomplishments on my wall has been done with a rogue Yu-Gi-Oh deck, so I think I know a thing or two about how strong they can particularly be. And in today's video, I'm going to be giving you everything you need to know about this powerful Yu-Gi-Oh strategy and why it could be a meta contender after the ban list. Let's go ahead and jump on in. What's going on with y'all big dogs? And it is an amazing day for Yu-Gi-Oh! I hope that's your day phenomenal. But if it isn't, don't let what happened at the beginning of your day ruin the rest of your day. I think one of the biggest reasons why Odion's strategy gets overlooked is one, it is a TCG exclusive. The Odion cards have their first release in the Americas in Europe, meaning that we have no statistical data on how powerful the strategy can be. The next thing is that the deck is filled with trap cards and is an anime deck. Historically, if we look at trap-based Yu-Gi-Oh strategies and anime strategies, they tend not to bolt over well. But one of the most solid decks in the game, Labyrinth, has actually built a pretty consistent empire over the years, being a really strong trap Yu-Gi-Oh deck. And when you go to the anime side, there are actually a ton of successful anime Yu-Gi-Oh strategies like Blue Eyes. Right now, Blue Eyes can be considered one of the best decks in the game, and it's simply because of the new support it received this year. I think right now, the Odion Apophis strategy is in a perfect position because it is a deck that works similarly like Labyrinth, being able to search trap cards, except this one's a little bit stronger, and like Blue Eyes, did receive all the correct support to make it way stronger than it ever was. Now, of course, I'm going to be breaking down in the deck profile some choices and of course a combo tutorial, but before I do, I just want to give a mad shout out to our sponsors. Raven Wing has the best sleeves available. I use them anytime I sleeve my Yu-Gi-Oh cards, and I'll be using them in this video. You can also go to TheCaliEffect.com and purchase your mats today. I actually will be having some amazing mats coming back in stock really soon, as well as a rubber version of the Millennium mat that you guys have been asking for. But with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and start off with the deck profile. One of the biggest things that happened for this deck is consistency, and we pretty much got a decent amount of it. Anubis the Last Judge is actually a crazy strong card. This card's main focus is to be able to search Mark of the Man, which is your entire combo. But one thing, a secret effect about Anubis the Last Judge is that it can summon itself from the graveyard by returning any 2 trap cards back into your deck. I know that its requirements may seem a little wacky because it does say Temple or Anubis cards, but the best way to put it is that as long as you have Verdict of Anubis in your graveyard and 2 other trap cards, you can return the 2 other trap cards, or Verdict and another trap card, to be able to special summon this monster to your side of the field, and this card actually does go crazy. Also, keep in mind, the Man with the Mark can send Verdict of Anubis or any card that mentions Temple of the Kings, spell or trap-wise, to the graveyard too. So there's actually different lines to use Anubis the Last Judge to get Man of the Mark to send the Verdict to the graveyard to summon back the Anubis. It's just some sneaky things that players don't pay attention to when it comes to Anubis the Last Judge. It's more than just a searcher. I also want to point out that it works similar to Blue Eyes Jet Dragon. If a card is destroyed, it gets to destroy a card, meaning that your own cards don't have to be destroyed in order to trigger its effect. Also, with Man of the Mark, another thing that a lot of people just don't know about is that while this card and Temple of the Kings are on the field, your Apophis in this card can't be destroyed by battle or card effects. All of these effects actually do come up when you're playing the deck really well. To try to make the deck as consistent as possible, I play 3 copies of Treasures of the Kings. I think right now you need to play a 3-3-3 ratio to make the deck as consistent as possible. I also complement it with 1 copy of Terraforming and 1 copy of Pot of Prosperity. This was as consistent as I could make it. I thought about using cards like Small World, but to be honest with you guys, Small World is only good if you don't have the combo. Once you already get it, it's pretty useless. And I also thought about using Set Rotation alongside of other field spells like Pressure Planet Racehorse because this deck can run the Kashtira engine. I went against this because I do have multiple ways to be able to get into combo, and sometimes you don't even need these cards to be able to stave your opponent off because the deck is just so good. For the power cards, there's 1 copy of Merciless Scorpion Circuit, 1 copy of Verdict, and 1 copy of Temple of the Kings. I genuinely wish that this card did not need Temple to be able to summon itself, or I'd run 3 of it. It's pretty much the big reason why I'm only running 1 copy. You need to already be established for this card effect to go through, but it's really important for the combo. Temple of the Kings is, again, this card is actually ridiculously insane, and I'll explain it a little bit later. I also think that at least 1 Verdict of Anubis is completely mandatory inside of this deck, not only because of the Judge of Anubis line that I just mentioned, also because this card can negate really powerful spell cards. Think of powerful spell cards that are being used right now, like Harpy's Feather Duster or Triple Tactics Talent. Oftentimes, you're going to have to deal with that, and having a way to search and recur a spell and trap removal that can also nuke your opponent's monsters is pretty strong. Now, for the continuous traps lineups, that's probably where this deck is left unsolved. Again, because the deck is so new, being a TCG exclusive, players are trying to figure out how many Apophis or other trap monsters that you should be running. I think I figured out the perfect formula with 2 copies of Apophis the Serpent, 2 copies of Swamp Deity, 1 copy of Embodiment of Apophis, and I'll explain. Serpent doesn't necessarily do anything by itself in a search through Treasures of the King. Apophis of the Swamp Deity is crazy strong because the Serpent can set it, but what I realized is that you don't need 3 copies because the card doesn't do anything by itself really either, but 1 copy ruins your grind game, and I think you absolutely need the Embodiment of the Apophis, especially if you're playing Statue of Anguish Pattern. Now, this card is absolutely insane. It's one of the best ways to be able to beat both Yugioh and Malice, because while they'll be able to get their effects, you can actually destroy their cards on the side of the field up to 3 times while potentially negating their entire field. I didn't think that Angel Statue as a rune was worth playing simply because I had enough trap monsters to be able to break my opponent's boards, negate their effects, and destroy cards. I can also easily reshuffle these cards back into the deck and search them again, which I thought was really good about this deck. Now, a card that does tie it all together, I actually got this from the guy that topped using Odion, was Lord of the Heavenly Prison. This card is easily searchable by Gallant Granite, which the combo does allow you to get into, but what I noticed is that players were leading on Lord of the Heavenly Prison to do a lot of dirty work. Through my research, there was a build that's playing Eradicator Epidemic Virus, which I think is crazy smart. There are also some other really powerful trap cards like Imperial Iron Wall, Dimensional Barrier, but what do you do when you don't know the matchup you're playing against? Well, I actually came with a perfect solution. I think trap cards like Solemn Strike and Destructive Daruma Cannon are actually insane for this deck. Solemn Strike solves the problem of dealing with monster effects that can really hurt you in your combo lines, and Destructive Daruma Cannon is pretty good in this deck. The reason why it's so good is, let's say, for example, I'll set up a board really quick. You have your Temple of the Kings, you use your Lord to be able to set your Daruma Cannon, and that's after you placed your statues to your side of the field. What you can do here is use the Daruma Cannon to be able to disrupt your opponent, but your statue monsters go back face down to your side of the field, which means on the next following turn, you can start activating them to summon and destroy all over again. This card's also amazing for being able to disrupt both Malice and Yugioh, preventing them from being able to Exceed Summon and Link Summon appropriately, and is also pretty good against Blue Eyes. So I thought that both the Solemn Strikes and the Daruma Cannon were probably the best cards to use until you know your opponent's matchup, and then you can switch for those cards that players were using, like your Dimensional Barriers and your Imperial Iron Walls. So one of the biggest reasons why this deck can thrive is the trap cards that you can play. You have ways to be able to disrupt your opponent's monsters and not just their effects, and you can even search blowout trap cards that can outright win the game. But another good reason why this deck is so powerful is your hand traps. I actually play 15 inside of a 40 card deck, which is mathematically what you need to be able to compete against some of the top decks in the game. With 3 copies of Ash, 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence, 3 copies of Nibiru the Primal Being, 2 copies of Dominus Purge, 2 copies of Effect Veiler, and 2 copies of Ogre, which, keep in mind, both Purge and Infinite Impermanence are searchable. This is a deck that can actually be really good at whittling down your opponent's resources while also being a strategy that is unaffected by Dominus Purge. I play Ash Blossom and Lord of the Heavenly Prison as my only fire and dark target. This is primarily an earth deck. On top of that, it's pretty easy to set the Dominus Purge, so it really isn't a problem. One of the biggest problems that I actually did come across when building this deck was to lower my trap count. Because this deck is revolved around Temple of the Kings and the Apophis cards, sometimes you don't want to clog your back row. That's why you're seeing some of the awkward ratios with 2 Solemn Strikes, 2 Destructive Daruma Cannons, to Dominus Purge. The biggest reason is because I wanted to be able to have opportunities where I could set cards to take advantage of Treasure of the Kings being able to search. But I also didn't want the cards to be too cloggy. I think 16 is the absolute maximum amount of trap cards that you should be playing inside of this deck because of that. Now, the extra deck is really, really simple. There's a Sky Crisis, a Time Thief Redoer, a Gallant Granted, 2 copies of Divine Serpent Apophis, 1 Ussa. This card can actually search Mark of the Man and Judgment, 1 SP Lethal Knight, 2 Link Spiders, because your Apophis cards are actually normal monsters while on the field, 2 Silhouette Rabbit, and then from here I play Ultimate Slayer targets, which also can double up as Metaltronus targets. That's the Tri-Brigade, the Cloud Beast, the Garua, the Murilotic, and that's pretty much it. But now that you've seen why I play certain cards to be able to beat the matchups that it needs to beat, I'll show you guys a couple of combos which makes this deck feel almost invincible. Not gonna lie to you guys, this deck is really simple. You need the Mark with the Man and 1 card to set face down to be the full combo. What you're gonna do here is start off by normal summoning Mark of the Man to be able to get Treasures of the Kings, and then you're gonna activate your Treasures of the Kings and use this effect to get your Apophis Serpent. Set your other card face down, then activate your Treasures of the Kings. You use that effect to be able to get your Merciless Scorpion circuit, and then you can banish a monster like Nibiru the Primal Being from your deck to be able to special summon out your Merciless Scorpion. Now use the effect of Merciless Scorpion to be able to get your Temple of the Kings, and here you have 2 different plays. Sometimes the most optimal play is to activate your Apophis Serpent, summon it to your side of the field, and then set your copy of Apophis the Swamp Deity to your side of the field. You then use both of these monsters for an Exceed summon. Summon out your copy of Gallant Granted and then detach the Apophis Serpent to be able to add the Lord of the Heavenly Prisons, and then trigger the effect of your Apophis Serpent to be able to add a Bottomit of Apophis to your hand. From here, you use these 2 monsters for a Link summon, and the card that you are going to be summoning is your Silhouette Rabbit. Use the effect of your Rabbit to be able to set to your side of the field the Statue of Anguish pattern. Then activate the effect of your Lord of Heavenly Prison, and then set your Bottomit of Apophis to pass your turn. This particular time around, you can activate the Statue of Anguish pattern, which means that when you activate the effect of your Bottomit of Apophis, you can destroy 1 card. You can also destroy another card with Silhouette Rabbit. Then you can activate your Apophis of the Swamp Deity, negate cards, destroy another card with your Angel Statue. Another cool thing is that if you shotgun the effect of Statue Pattern, you can then special summon your Lord of Heavenly Prison, and then use the effect of Lord of Heavenly Prison to set a card like Verdict of Anubis if you fear a card like Harpy's Featherduster. You can set Dominus Purge if you want to prevent them from searching, and the best thing about it is that you can destroy since you have a trap card in your graveyard. Or you can set Solemn Strike if your opponent's trying to go for like an Exciton or a Zeus play, and this card can pretty much stop them in their tracks and negate the entire summon. Keep in mind, this was done with technically a 1.5 card combo, so you have other cards in your hand which could be hand traps. And the best thing about it is that since I did set the Daruma Cannon this time around, I can actually use it to send all of these monsters and this back face down into your spell and trap card zone, which can come up. The reason why it does come up is because on the following turn, since you have face down cards, you can use your treasures to be able to search out your Anubis the Last Judge, discard it to the graveyard, search Man of the Mark and summon it. If you don't have your Verdict in the graveyard, you can send it to the graveyard. You then be able to summon the Last Judge by returning Verdict and your other trap card back into your deck. And then this should be enough for, oh wait, it shouldn't be the Heavenly Prison. This should be enough to be able to destroy your monsters, link and Exceed summon to whatever you want, and go for game. Coincidentally, there is another combo that you guys can do, which I think it's pretty strong depending on the situation. We'll say Man with the Mark plus the same Daruma Cannon. We'll summon it to our side of the field, use its effect to be able to add our treasures. Treasures will be able to set our Apophis Serpent. Hypothetically, if the Treasures of the Kings gets negated or the Man with the Mark gets negated and we have Temple, what we would do here is that we can summon the Apophis Serpent, use it to set the Swamp Deity. You have a decision tree here. You can Exceed summon into a monster like Gallant Granite, which is kind of strong. It can still search Nibiru the Primal Being or your Lord of Heavenly Prison. You can Exceed summon into Time Thief Redoer, which now it has a trap card for interruption. That's pretty strong. Or hear me out, you can actually just summon out your Apophis of the Swamp Deity, use both of these monsters for that contact fusion into your Divine Serpent of Apophis. That allows you to be able to set both your trap cards back to your side of the field and also allows you to be able to get that Bottomit of Apophis from your deck to your hand. Meaning that if you really wanted to, you can destroy a card with Serpent or you can use both of these cards for that link summon into your Silhouette Rabbit, and then that card will allow you to be able to set your statue, which means you have 1, 2, 3 destructions off a pattern and the negation with Apophis, and you can set these cards back to your side of the field. And that is why I think that the Odion strategy will be a tier 1 Yu-Gi-Oh deck after the ban list. It's almost unhittable. It has some really cool combos, but more importantly, it can search some of the most powerful trap cards in the entire game and use them on the turn they're set. Of course, big dog, as you already know, I stand for rogue decks, so let me know if you think that I'm tripping or not, or let me know what you're doing with your Odion deck. Of course, Clash, your homework for today is to do exactly that, or you can go ahead and check out these videos so I can catch you on the next one.